we're trying to know what we are, right? We want to know what we are. But the thing is, you can't know what you are. You can only be what you are. And so when you're meditating, for a while you want to ask, well, what is it that experiences this state of peace, tranquility? What is it that experiences this meditation experience? And eventually the response has to be, well, I do, right? Because it's you. And then it leads back to the process of, all right, well, what am I? And you realize everything that you're not until eventually you sit quietly. And as you sit there, everything that comes through your awareness, everything that you experience, it's not something that you have to push away or be done with. You start to realize that that is you. And so once you realize that all of this stuff is you, you're not so triggered by it, which means that everything becomes okay. The sounds that you hear, the thoughts that come through your mind, the emotions that come up, it's almost as if you are this vast ocean of consciousness and you're just paying attention to it. And so it's not something you're trying to get rid of, because you can't. It's something that you are just experiencing, you are just being. And that is what we're aiming for with self-inquiry, to be all of this. Okay. I was watching a movie a couple days ago, and there was someone said something, and what popped into my head was something about God. And what popped into my head was, God's grace is always free. It's the rest that you have to pay for, right? It's like every experience you want to have, everything that you want to make happen, everything that you pray for or whatever, you actually have to do some work to experience that. But just to be quiet and sit there still, that's always accessible to you. It's what we're learning to do through this process is just to accept that, admit it, and then be it and experience it. All right, that's the goal. Yeah, usually what I do is as soon as I sit down in the morning or in the evening, I start with alternate nostril breathing. And I link that up with a mantra. So, I pick a mantra, whatever it might be.
Do you vary your mantra, or do you always use the...
I have a couple that I use pretty often. Sometimes I'll think of another one that for some reason I just feel like using that day, but I usually stick with one or two. And I do one mantra during the alternate nostril breathing on each breath. I say it. So inhale, I say it. Exhale, I say it. Inhale, I say it. Exhale, I say it. And then I'll sit for a while. I do that about 27 rounds of that, and then I do the Sushumna breathing, the pulling the current up the spine. And I do the same thing. I have a mantra. And so when I breathe in and I imagine and feel that current coming up the spine to the top, I will have said a mantra in my mind. And then I'll let it flow down, back down the spine, and I will have said the same mantra again. And I do that about 27 times. And then I sit there quietly for a while with my attention up here, not trying to do anything, not trying to make anything happen. If I'm thinking, I don't care. Whatever's going on, I'm just watching it, I'm just experiencing it. And that's really great if you can. You've probably already experienced it, but if you can get into a point where you are just alert and awake, and maybe you've got your attention up here, and all of a sudden things start passing through your mind, like thoughts or memories or things that you hadn't thought about in forever, as if it is on a screen. So it's not that you're thinking about it, but it's just passing before you. And eventually that stops, because that is like the mind or the emotional body processing whatever's still in there. And you notice that most, if you've had a busy day, or if like you've watched a show or something, or heard a song, they come up and they go through. But once that's done and things subside and calm down, I sit there for a while again, and then I will ask, again with my attention up here, what is experiencing this? And when I ask what is experiencing this, I mean like, what is experiencing the feeling of my feet against the floor? What is experiencing the feeling of my body in this chair? Or if a thought comes up, what is experiencing this? And again, until eventually the answer is, well, I am. And then once that comes up, then again I ask, well, what am I? And when you ask that question, it really directs you back into everything that you think about what you are, until eventually you realize that all these things you think that you are not you, and then you can simply sit there in that quiet, tranquil state, and that becomes a deepening meditation experience until the timer goes off or whenever you're done. So that's the process that I typically use that works pretty well. And that's kind of what I want to get folks doing here. And then next month when we get together for the last session, that's all we'll do. We'll just practice it. Once you know what you are, you know that you are everything, and so this idea of God was you anyway.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And so when you practice the self-inquiry, and the way you do it is you ask the question, what am I? Or what is experiencing this? But then you need to wait. Like you need to back off. So you ask, what am I? And if you've done your alternate nostril breathing and breath awareness, you should be pretty calm. So you can sit there and be patiently waiting for that response. And it doesn't come as a word, or it doesn't come as someone talking to your ear. It's a realization. It's an aha moment that you have. And that is what transforms you when you experience that. And in this book, Vasishtha Yoga, one of the things that it says is that everything that you experience is the mind. Like, that's it. Everything that you think, everything that you experience out here is the result of what's in your mind. So certain people believe certain things and they experience it. People who have a lot of money, they don't necessarily think they have a lot of money because they're used to it. That's what's in their mind, right? People who are sick all the time, they can't imagine what it's like to be well because in their mind, they're thinking sickness a lot. So people who are enlightened and liberated, they're not going around saying, oh, I'm in bondage, I need to experience God. They're just saying, I'm awake. And then they experience it. So that's the other thing about this too, is to be aware of what's going on in your mind. And if you think you need to do, say, or be something different than what you are to experience this liberation of consciousness, that's something you need to get out of your head. Because it's right here. Whether you're a bum or whether you're rich or whether you're great or terrible, it's all the same thing. It's that just kind of acknowledging this is it. And then everything gets peaceful and then you get it, right? So that's the whole point about the mind. So pay attention to what's in your mind, and don't let things be in your mind that you really don't want to experience, because you'll experience them, right? So that's the goal here. So when you sit down and meditate, don't think you are someone who needs to, atone for sins or do so many mantras, whatever it might be. You are sitting down to meditate because you like it and because it allows you to really know what you are fully and completely. That's why you do it. And then it becomes, one of my friends, he was giving a talk at some Science of Mind church, and he said that people talk about spiritual practice, and he said it occurred to him when he was giving this talk that it's not about spiritual practice, that every time you sit down to meditate, that's like spiritual performance. Like, you're not wanting to practice, it's not a dress rehearsal. You're sitting down and you're doing this process not to practice, but so that you really get into it, so that you really experience it, so you give your full self to it. It's just like that same experience of you're there, and then it becomes enjoyable. You don't have to make yourself do it. You want to do it, So that's why I like teaching these classes, because eventually folks get that, and then everyone starts doing it. It's just the most natural thing in the world, So that's what we're trying to do.